Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP. Nick is here in attendance with me once more because today we're going to be going through our Friday Night SmackDown recap from this week's episode of Friday Night SmackDown. This will be the Friday 14th edition of the episode. So how about we break everything down, get into all the action that took place across the course of the night, and discuss everything that went down. So first and foremost, we would kick things off with Rhea Ripley and Io Sky from Monday Night Raw. They'd come down into the ring and basically started cutting a promo, just referring to Rhea's recent time out, recovering from a broken nose, and how obviously she's wearing this face mask. And quite ironically as well, didn't she go into War Games the previous year with a face mask as well? Seems to be the sort of look for Rhea around this time of year, apparently. The Kabuki Warriors, they are referenced pretty quickly. Rhea says how they think they're untouchable now. And basically, because they've got the Women's Tag Team Championship, they think they can do what they like and just basically wreak havoc. She highlights Nia and Lash as enemies, as well as saying, how dangerous that the Kabuki Warriors are. Basically, just sort of just saying how, much of a target each and every single one of their opponents are going to be. Io then speaks up, saying that they are absolutely ready and raring to go for War Games before then Rhea welcomes down two of their teammates, being Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. They make their way down to the ring, and that's when Alexa gets onto the mic and basically starts saying how her and Charlotte are both ready for War Games themselves, and then she looks for confirmation from Charlotte herself as well. Charlotte, though, when she takes the mic, she doesn't really match the energy that Alexa Bliss is putting down. She basically said that she can't do this anymore, just completely out of the blue sort of thing, before then saying that she doesn't like Rhea Ripley. She doesn't trust her and that she thinks that she's a bit of a snake. Charlotte says that if Rhea feels the same way about her, then you know what, that's absolutely fair game. She understands. And then Charlotte basically says to Alexa Bliss she can't do this anymore, and she says, count me off of the team, I'm not in. She leaves the ring, and that obviously, leaves a very shocked Alexa, Rhea, and Io. I guess more so Alexa and Io, really. Rhea's just sort of looking at her, kind of getting where she's coming from. The two have a lot of history between themselves. So, yeah, you could see written over her face that she understood, and she didn't really seem too surprised by it. But definitely Io and Alexa are a little bit sort of a bit more shocked by the situation, for sure. Charlotte leaves the ring, she heads up the ramp, and that is basically the end of the segment. Almost has a bit of a weird feel to it. I'm not sure if you got the same vibe. I felt a little bit awkward towards the very, very final couple of seconds here. Maybe that's just me overthinking things, but it did feel a little bit sort of underwhelming in the end. I don't know. We did get a little bit of a situation backstage later on in the night where Nia and Lash, as well as the Kabuki Warriors, would be attacking the likes of Rhea, Alexa, and Io. So, yeah, maybe they could have transitioned that into the segment. I don't know, but it was a little bit of a slightly awkward ending to it for sure. Following up from that, we were going to our first match of the night, which would see the continuation of the Last Time Is Now tournament. First round matchup between Jey Uso and The Miz. This one would be a pretty standard SmackDown contest, I think it's fair to describe it as. Miz looked pretty decent, to be fair. He was even paying homage to John Cena at one point, going for the five-knuckle shuffle, which he hit successfully, and then looking for the attitude adjustment as well, which he couldn't quite get down to a T because of Jey Uso reversing it. But yeah, a little bit back and forth contest between the two men. Miz even hits a skullcrusher finale at one point and gets a 2 count from Jey Uso, so quite close to getting the win for himself. Jey basically gets back into the control. They get to the second rope, and Jey sort of like lifts the Miz up onto his shoulders. I think he might be going for like a Samoan drop or something, perhaps, quite crazy avalanche style thing. And instead of doing something like that, basically just sort of drops Miz onto the ropes. I'm not entirely sure if it was meant to be as how it looked, because it looked a little bit sloppy, a little bit botchy. I'm not sure if it actually was or not. I've seen the move been hit in the past, but definitely a lot cleaner than what we saw on this one. It looked very, very dodgy to me. But either way, Miz completely out of it at that point. Jey hits a spear, goes for an Uso splash, and that's be enough to get the victory in this contest. So Jey Uso advances onto the next round. First SmackDown superstar to do so. So yeah, we get the little continuation of the tournament just there. Next up, we would then have a backstage segment that would see Nick Aldis in his office, and he would be quickly joined by Bronson Reed and Paul Heyman. Heyman confirming that they've had a discussion recently about the upcoming War Games matchup, and that he can take any talent from any brand in WWE for their War Games team, and that includes Friday Night SmackDown. And he's very much highlighting the fact that he can take any talent. Like, there's a big old thing about that between Heyman and Nick Aldis. Nick says, "Yep, that is exactly what we discussed, via email. Why are you confirming this to me face to face? Nothing's changed." So that classic sort of employee boss situation, but maybe the other way around this time, where one of these things could be done by email. Maybe a bit more about this later on in the night, though. We'll talk about that as we go along. But yeah, we get then Cody Rhodes coming on in, and he would then tell, he would then basically square up to both Bronson Reed and Paul Heyman. Cody would challenge Bronson to a match later tonight, before Heyman says, well, if you're going to challenge him to a match, at least do the whole thing. Put the title on the line. Cody immediately agrees, tells Nick Aldis to book it. Nick's very apprehensive in order to do so, but Cody does convince him nonetheless, and we do get a title match for later on in the show announced, Cody versus Bronson Reed for the WWE Undisputed Championship. Next up, we would then have a United States Championship match, and that would be Ilya Dragunov continuing his open challenges. This time, he would previously in the back have another interaction with DIY, especially Tommaso Ciampa, basically calling him a jackass once again and saying that he's not going to defend it against him. He wants to defend it against somebody who fights for honor and can put on an extremely good, back and forth contest with him, just battling from the heart. And he says that, he knows the perfect person to do that. Then, cue in frame, in comes Fraxium, and more specifically, Axiom in his in-ring gear. So we get Axiom versus Ilya Dragunov for the United States Championship, and this was this is tale of two halves for me. I was enjoying the match. I thought it was a decent, first half and like into the second third of it, and then I thought, what, this isn't too bad, but I think it could be a little bit better. And then, literally like a switch, it just got instantly just crazy. There's this amazing sort of sequence in the matchup where Ilya goes for the H-bomb and Axiom manages sort of like a catch him in the process. He jumps up onto the top rope, landing perfectly, bouncing somehow, and then he just backflips into a DDT. Absolutely beautiful stuff. Just a moment afterwards, there's an avalanche Spanish fly. Looks like Axiom's going to follow up with a golden ratio to get the win, but instead gets a torpedo Moscow for his troubles from Ilya Dragunov, and then the H-bomb does then officially be hit, and that would be enough for Ilya to win this matchup and remain the United States champion. But yeah, this was an incredible second half, maybe last third of the contest. It was really, really fun to watch. So yeah, just another, I guess, classic in these US Open challenges. And then going into our last bit of the first half here of SmackDown, we do then see Sami Zayn coming out into the arena. He's going to be cutting a promo, and he basically looks back on his time on SmackDown, saying that, there's been some highs, there have been some lows. He's beat Solo Sikoa for the United States Championship, took on John Cena, as well as some of the best talent in his US Open challenges. He said the last few weeks have been especially challenging, though, that he's had to watch the MFTs just wreck the place, basically. He says he's had enough of sitting in the back and watching on, recovering, and how that's going to end tonight. He then calls out Solo Sikoa before the MFTs arrive. Solo says that he knows the real Sami Zayn deep down is in there somewhere, and how he's a liar and he's desperate. He says Sami doesn't care about anyone but himself, and how he doesn't care about the crowd either. Strange call there, but sure. Solo says he cares about his family before questioning Sami's loyalty when it comes to family. Solo then suggests that Sami is still wounded before he gets into the ring with his MFTs on the apron, and he says that he's going to wait, however, until Sami is 100%. Sami says Solo doesn't need to wait for very long, though, because as of tonight, he is 100% clear. He then says that he didn't come alone before Shinsuke Nakamura, Rey Fenix, and the Motor City Machine Guns arrive. They all start brawling with the MFTs. A fight breaks out between everybody, and then eventually, in the end, we do get Tonga just sort of pulling Solo Sikoa out of the ring before Sami can hit a haluva kick. We get Rey Fenix hitting the skies, hitting a lovely tornado splash onto just basically all of the MFTs on the outside. And then we do get the faces of the situation here standing tall at the end of the segment. So, yeah, in terms of first half of SmackDown here, what do you make of the Charlotte, I guess, delving back into a history with Rhea Ripley there in her opening segment? Did you think the ending was a little awkward to that, or maybe am I overthinking things? Miz losing out to Jey Uso in the last time as now tournament first round. What do you make of that contest there, specifically with Jey Uso winning and advancing? Ilya Dragunov putting on another classic here against Axiom. How fun was that matchup, especially those closing stages? And yeah, what do you make of our next sort of installment here of the Sami Zayn, Motor City Machine Guns, Rey Fenix, Shinsuke Nakamura, and MFT saga?
Yeah, I actually liked the opening promo. I thought, one of our biggest complaints historically about Survivor Series, War Games, and all of that is that a lot of the feuds tend to be put on pause, and I by far the biggest complaint I see about that PLE. And I think this one kind of has a bit of realism to it in that obviously Charlotte addressing the past with Rhea. I think that's a good call. I think it adds some interesting dynamic. Now does because it seemed like we had a good chunk of that team already put together. Well, now we're down one more member, or at least that appears to be the case for the time being. Um, will Charlotte, kind of come to her senses the way Alexa seems to think, or maybe Charlotte joins the heel side. I think regardless, I like this a bit of a drama before Survivor Series. I think that's a great call. And now we have a few more spots open on or between the heels and the faces. So I like this, and I'm interested to see where they take that from there. Miz and Jey Uso, yeah, I think that was I liked it a bit better than a standard SmackDown match. I thought the Miz looked really good. He's always been a consistent performer, obviously, but he looked really good, and I genuinely didn't know if they were gonna who they were going to advance. I thought both men kind of had a good case for it. But alas, as you mentioned, yeah, I'm not sure if that move over in the corner was intentional. It did look a bit off. I thought brutal enough to maybe look like it was intentional, but wouldn't surprise me either way, to be honest. So, yeah, Jey Uso getting the win there. Maybe think the Miz would have been better choice given their history, but I think provided kind of the promos that the Miz has been cutting lately about being that deserving person, I think that'll help him just kind of go off the rails and develop more as a character, and perhaps interfere with someone else's match that has been announced later on the night. So we'll wait and see. Ilya once again, yeah, killing it per usual. You know, yeah, the ending was good as well. Um, yeah, Axiom I think is another top contender as well. Ilya just man just brings this a certain level of intensity level to every match. It makes it so enjoyable, and I think I don't know if it's entirely true, but I've seen some rumors online about how people don't want to go into a match with him because he's so intense that people need like extra time to recover. And if that's true, it wouldn't surprise me at all because the man just has a way about working a match, and it's so entertaining. And I'm so happy to see that on the main roster now, and for everyone to see. But yeah, um, I, hopefully the U.S. title challenge never ends, and we get this just every single week. But yeah, every match seems to come out and put on a great performance at the very least, if not even better. So yeah, I enjoyed that one as well. The promo with Sammy, yeah, finally getting 100% cleared, wasting zero time. I think we both kind of thought that that was the Survivor Series War Games match we were headed for. Was all of these members here with Sammy going up against MFT, but alas, it is not. However, it is seen in a promo later where it is announced that we will get Shinsuke, Sammy, MCMG, and Ray Phoenix going up against the MFT in a traditional Survivor Series tag elimination match, and that is to take place on the SmackDown before Survivor Series. So I kind of like that too. If you like the old format, you get a bit of that on the SmackDown before. If you like the new format, we can have some of that on Survivor Series. So I kind of like that call. It'll be interesting to see in a promo earlier that we do see MFT behind them. We also see Wyatt Six kind of lurking in the background. In particular, Uncle Howdy appears that he's been back at least to a certain extent. I'm not sure if that's an in-ring capability or not, but regardless, seeing him in the back. So I thought that was an effective segment there, and getting in what feels like would have been an otherwise kind of wasted moment there. So I'm glad they're getting in that as well. But yeah, lots of story and finally a nice build towards Survivor Series. I know we got a bit on Monday too, but I was worried there that we were wasting too much time. So definitely ramped up the speed for that drama for Survivor Series. I'm here for it.
Yeah, they have sort of amped up the speed a little bit here, and I think they are naturally just going to do that the closer we do get to it, which obviously makes sense, quite logical. Speaking of logical as well, just want to quickly point out, I did actually quite like the opening segment. Just I like the logic, that was being sort of implied there by Charlotte towards Rhea Ripley specifically. I just thought maybe the last, couple of seconds was a little bit awkward. Just the three of them just stood there in the ring, not really know what to do. But I guess it did highlight the situation and basically just was something they didn't really see coming. It was kind of left field. So I guess it does make sense in that regard. And then with the announcement, like you said, of the 5 versus 5 traditional tag team elimination match, Survivor Series style. I'm looking forward to the matchup, but because it's going to be on a weekly show, and obviously we know how tight for time SmackDown normally is, I am a little bit worried that either one or two things will happen. Either A, it'll be too long and we don't really get much of anything else on the show, or it's going to be too rushed, and then it's not going to really hit as hard as what we would see on a normal retro Survivor Series, I guess you could say, from the length of time we would normally get from these type of matches. So yeah, I think it could go one of two ways here. And interesting to see which way they do go down with it. And like you said, with the Hardys, the Wyatt Six sort of just I don't know, maybe possibly getting back into the situation soon. It does sort of pose definitely a different sort of dynamic to it as well. So quite interesting for sure. And I am looking forward to the match nonetheless, though. Going into our second half of Friday Night SmackDown, we would then kick off the second half with another one of the last time is now tournament matches. And we knew that LA Knight was competing in this one, but we didn't know his opponent. It was going to be a mystery reveal sort of thing. And eventually, in the end, we would sort of have a bit of a wait when LA Knight did his entrance, and then the camera would pan over to the ramp, the stage sort of thing. And then eventually we would hear woo, 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 and it would be the return of Zack Ryder for the first time in a WWE ring in about 5 years or so. So quite a long time it's been since he'd been in the WWE banner sort of thing. And he'd been away in the Indies, is absolutely killing it. So LA Knight, didn't expect this. I don't think I really expected it either. But it is somebody who's got a lot of history with John Cena, so it does make a lot of sense, and it's a logical choice to have in the tournament. The two have put on a pretty fun match, in my opinion. I quite enjoyed this one. Very, very much back and forth. Really good reaction for Zack Ryder, being back in WWE. And just generally speaking, it was just a really well-flowing contest. It just worked for me. And had a nice vibe to it as well. We get to a point where Zack goes to the second rope. I think he's maybe looking for a radio silence or a Rough Rider, as we know it now. He would try and go for it, but I think he get a powerbomb by LA Knight instead for his troubles. Knight would then pick Zack Ryder back up to his feet, hit a BFT, and that'll be enough to get the victory here in this contest. So, pretty good back and forth between the two men. LA Knight does advance, and Zack Ryder comes back, and unfortunately for himself, does not really get a good return in terms of a result here. But generally speaking, really good pop for him, and was nice to see him back in the WWE ring once again. We then go into our next match, which was a very short one, quick fashion. Jade Cargill, one-on-one with B-Fab. And I think probably everyone expected this one to be quite quick. We saw what Jade did to Tiffany Stratton quite recently, taking her title from her. And now the champion looks to sort of continue that momentum here and just dismantle her next opponent and victim. And that was B-Fab on this occasion. Like I said, Jade Cargill makes pretty quick work here of B-Fab. It is over basically before it's even started. There's a very little bit of offense from B-Fab, a couple of strikes and stuff, kicks here and there. That's really about it. And then Jade Cargill goes through the motions, hits her jaded, and that'll be enough to get the win for her in the end. We do see Michin come on down to sort of check on B-Fab post-match, just looking out for a friend sort of thing. Jade, once she notices Michin's in the ring, just sort of gets up in the face of herself, and then gives her a bit of a shove before she then leaves the ring. Michin obviously very furious about the situation, sort of shouting away at Jade Cargill. And maybe that's where we're heading next. Maybe it's going to be Jade Cargill 1-1 with Michin. I guess that's going to be the play from what's gone on here. I suppose that's where we're heading next between these two women. After that, we'd have a little bit of a backstage thing where Nick Aldis would then draw the next two matches for the Last Time Is Now tournament. We would then see Carmelo Hayes be drawn 1-on-1 against Bronson Reed. And then the second match of that would be Penta 1-on-1 with Finn Balor. This would be quite interesting, that second match specifically here, because these two matches are going to be taking place on SmackDown. So obviously Carmelo Hayes being the SmackDown superstar of the four, all other three men are on Raw. So we do mention, not a lot of opportunities for those on SmackDown. and now we've got literally a match that's going to be entirely Raw taking place. So I found that quite interesting. Why that wasn't done on Raw, I have no idea, but yeah, definitely quite interesting for sure. Looking forward to the matches though. They both sound great. Mello against Reed and Penta against Balor. Yeah, sign me up for both. Looking forward to both of them. See who wins, and advance on to the next round. Then we go into our main event of the night, and like I said earlier on, it would be Cody Rhodes one-on-one with Bronson Reed for the WWE Undisputed Championship. This one wouldn't really last too long in terms of an in-ring contest. It would be a little bit back and forth between both men. Bronson, showcasing his power. Cody fighting from underneath at times, just basically getting back into the situation, proving why he's the WWE champion. And it gets to a point where we go to the outside, and Bron Breakker attacks Cody seemingly out of absolutely nowhere, just launches himself, sort of like a diving shoulder tackle type move. And he sort of rocked Cody onto the announcer's table, and then the referee calls immediately for the match to end, disqualification. So Cody Rhodes technically defeats Bronson Reed via DQ. We would then see the Usos coming on down to help out Cody Rhodes. This is after earlier the night, Jimmy would also declare himself on War Games as part of Team Punk and Cody and whatever. So yeah, we see the Usos come on down. They would come to help out Cody. Logan's also there, by the way, as well, with Bronson Reed, so he's sort of already in the mix here. They get to a point, the Usos, they put Logan Paul onto a table in the middle of the ring. The Usos look for an Uso splash, and then we get Drew McIntyre coming on back into the situation. He shoves one of the Usos off of the top rope, and then it would be very apparent what's happening here. So Nick Aldis comes down the ramp, telling Drew that he's suspended. He can't be here. He's not allowed to. But Heyman, very insistently with his contract, says that he was allowed to have anyone from the roster on his team for War Games. So by that technicality, I suppose, Drew McIntyre no longer suspended because he's now part of the Vision's team for War Games. So yeah, I guess get some loopholes in there and stuff. We then see Drew, Bronson, Braun, and Logan take out the Usos and Cody to stand tall at the end of the show. So yeah, Drew McIntyre returns. No more suspension for him, I guess, is the vibe from here. So he was literally out for no less than a week. So no more than a week. And yeah, he's already back into the swing of things. So quite interesting for sure. But our second half, what'd you make of it, Nick? The return for zackryder, 1-1 with LA Knight, taking the loss, but still looking pretty good in my opinion. What about you? Jay Cargill destroying B-Fab, and then that little interaction with Michin at the end. Doesn't really have main title picture for me all over it, but maybe you can shine something up from that one. And then our main event, yeah, Cody and Bronson didn't last too long before it all turned into a little bit of a chaotic mess towards the end, but with Drew McIntyre coming back in and aligning himself with the Vision and Logan Paul. What did you make of that team for War Games, the way it's shaping up, and just generally how the main event went?
Yeah, second half has a lot of talking points, and I think it's going to come across as negative, but certainly some of them are. But I think certainly some of them are just areas of potential improvement. But to kick all that off, did want to just mention that we kind of, I think you mentioned this off air, that SmackDown has decided that they are going back to 3 hours, which is a godsend, absolutely, absolutely needed. I think I don't want to take credit, but I think our podcast is definitely one of the biggest reasons why WWE has probably decided to do that. So good on them for listening to us. Yeah, Zack Ryder coming back, that was a great moment. People complaining about the fact that they lost, it's fine. LA Knight's one of, if not the most over guy in WWE. So losing to him, I don't think is a big issue. And on that note, yeah, the match was great. And if LA Knight doesn't, in fact, win the last time is now tournament, I would love to see a feud between those two. The promos would write themselves. You could make a great feud with those two. But yeah, nice to have the indie god back in WWE. I always thought he was massively underrated, and the number of times he's reinvented himself is right up there with Chris Jericho. The man just knows wrestling and he knows the business, and the longer we can keep on to him, the better. The Jade Cargill B-Fab match. Yeah, that's it's kind of a pro and con for me. A pro is that, yeah, I like the way that Jade's character is going. I think it's the best direction for her. The con being, and it's kind of gonna segue this into the next couple of segments here, is that SmackDown just especially on the women's side, they need a shakeup because I feel like we've seen the same 5 matchups over and over the last year, and it's in dire need of a refresh now. Especially with that going back to 3 hours, I think you could make the case that either a draft or at least a shakeup could be heavily beneficial. If we are going to 3 matches, and I think, or excuse me, 3 hours, and I think we could see new, fresh matchups that would desperately, aside from the time constraints, I think the roster limitations are the biggest issue with SmackDown. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully they do that, kind of coinciding with the increase in time. And on that same note with the roster bit, yeah, you mentioned the 3 superstars from Raw. Yeah, it's really no excuse. If there's ever a sign saying, "Hey, we don't have enough people on SmackDown," that has to be an instance of it. And I think it was mentioned earlier in the commentary team that we would see, Raw superstars on SmackDown, just trying to cover up the fact that they didn't have the right matchups on SmackDown. So if it's not obvious, yeah, that shakeup is desperately needed at the very, very least. And speaking of another kind of thing that I think they could improve on, Cody, just very quickly and casually accepting that title match that Paul Heyman baited him into, and Cody bit, like a typical babyface would. If you are going to go that route, which I think you could argue that, a babyface doesn't have to be so dumb, but especially if you are going to go that route, I think you do need to go the route that make the match more than what I think what ended up being like 5 minutes, if that. Very, very short. And I was actually looking forward to the contest. If you are going to have him accept it and make a big deal out of accepting the title match as the main event, at least give them some kind of time to work. It felt like before we even really got going, we got the interference. And I don't know why. Maybe it is just me, but the fact that we only saw Paul and Bronson earlier had me thinking that Braun was off doing something else. But obviously, that wasn't the case. Logan and Braun and then Drew coming into play, which yeah, like I said, it does advance the storyline, but I would have liked at least 5 more minutes in the main event, and especially if I'm live there in the crowd, I'm pretty disappointed that I didn't get more wrestling, at least in that particular match. So yeah, I think Drew McIntyre being added there, I think it's great. Still have one more spot available. Curious to see who that is, and then of course Jimmy joining on the face side. I would be shocked if Jimmy and Jay don't kind of start their big thing at Survivor Series. Tends to be a popular spot for it, but yeah, it'd be curious to see who else will join the face side and the smack and the heel side as well. So yeah, I have a couple more weeks to work on that, but yeah, overall, I thought SmackDown was really good. Provided some good matches and a lot of advancement in that Survivor Series War Games. So no real complaints from me. Just little nitpicks here and there. I think they could things they could do to help improve now that we do have the SmackDown time enhancement coming as well. Overall, I'd give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Pretty decent show, I think, highlighted by the return of Zackryder for me personally.
Yeah, you basically just summed it up exactly how I was going to as well. 7.5 seems fair, and I would agree. I think it was about that quality too. Yeah, highlights for me obviously being Zack Ryder coming back in and putting on a decent match against LA Knight. I quite enjoyed it, to be honest. And seeing Drew McIntyre's suspension being just loopholed within a week, so I just quite enjoyed that as well, just from a personal standpoint. Ilya Dragunov and Axiom putting on a killer as well just was great. And I am looking forward to that 5 vs 5 elimination style traditional Survivor Series matchup. Just really interested to see the dynamic about it. So yeah, like you said, obviously with SmackDown going to 3 hours coming up in January, yeah, I mean it can't come any sooner, really, can it? It needs to happen. It needs to happen. We saw the decline of shows, from when they went from 3 hours to 2. So it's really good news to see they are going to be going back to it. So hopefully we get that incline back to where it should be, where it could be. But as for this episode of SmackDown, that is basically everything that we have to say here at The Push. Thank you to everybody for tuning on in here and, just hearing what we've got to say about it. If you've got any thoughts, any comments, please let us know in the comments below, whether it's good, bad, and different. We'd love to hear what you're thinking. The dynamic of SmackDown at the moment, the last time is now tournament, Zack Ryder's return, all this kind of stuff. We'd love to hear whatever you guys are thinking. And also, if you liked what we put out here today, please consider hitting a like on our video, subscribing to our channel, and keeping up with future content coming out very, very soon. We've always got loads of stuff coming on out. We're very, very busy here at The Push. But for now, everyone, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy, and goodbye for now.